So today marked the launch of the Xbox One S. If you want to see how well it's doing, I'll leave a link down below to the top selling items on Amazon, which they update hourly, so you can kind of get a snapshot as to how well it's doing. Last time I checked, though, it was in the top 5, and since that's one of the world's largest retailers, it's a pretty good list. But I've done several videos on the Xbox One S, so I'm not going to recap all the different features of the console. If you want to review that, I'll leave those other videos down below because all that information is still very relevant. But there is one bit of new information that's come out that I wanted to tell you about. Now, when I first did a video about the Xbox One S right after E3, I reported that the Xbox One S was going to play some games a little bit better than the original Xbox One because it had a slight power upgrade. Now, this information actually came from the Gears of War 4 director, who said that they had their hands on the console and that they had already seen some improvements with it. Now, we weren't talking huge improvements, we're just talking about some improvements. So right after that story broke, it started picking up steam. Microsoft jumped in, Phil Spencer and team started saying, no, it's gonna play games the exact same way as the original Xbox One. There's no power upgrade. It's not gonna play games any better. It'll have HDR capability for games that take advantage of it, and it's going to upscale all games to 4K. Flash forward to today, however, and now that the system is out in the wild and some websites have had it for a few days, there are reports that the Xbox One S does indeed run some games a little bit better because it does have a little bit more power than the Xbox One S. And this is due to the fact that there is a 7% increase for the GPU clock speed as well as increased bandwidth for the SRAM. And so Digital Foundry has tested several games. Some games had up to 9 more frames per second than the same games running on the Xbox One. And so whenever you're talking about close to a 10 frames per second jump, I mean, that's a fairly big jump in some games. Now, a lot of games, of course, are capped out at 30 frames per second. And so what you might have is, some games that were capped down at 30, they may dip down below that 30 at some periods in the game. And so what you might have is the Xbox One S being able to hold that steady 30 frames per second. Of course, we're not talking about a huge leap here. We're not talking about the Xbox One S running games at 60 frames per second while the Xbox One is playing the same games at 30 frames per second. But what we are looking at is a little bit better performance and really consistency. And like anything, it's gonna depend on the game. So some games aren't gonna be impacted at all. If you've got a game that's already running a solid 30 frames per second on the Xbox, it's not like you're gonna get higher frames per second on the Xbox One S. You might get a little bit better looking picture if you're taking advantage of the 4K upscaler and you've got a TV that can handle that. Or you're looking at HDR color, which again, you would need a TV that takes advantage of that feature. So in all, the original report was correct. There was a small performance boost, not a huge one, but Microsoft didn't think it was big enough to even make this a selling point, which is understandable, but it's kind of strange also that they basically were saying their Gears of War 4 dev didn't know what he was talking about when he said there would be a difference, and they jumped up and down saying no, there wouldn't be a difference. Now, as I said in the first video, the performance boost is not a reason to go get an Xbox One S. I would not buy the console for this purpose. I'm just letting you know about it. It's an extra perk, but it's not a selling feature because there's just not that huge of a difference to make it that way. And for me, I'm not updating to the Xbox One S. So I'm happy with the Xbox One as it is right now. There's just not enough reasons for me to upgrade to the S, so I'm just going to hold out and then maybe jump up to the Scorpio depending on what they show with that. But if you want to read more about this, links down below as always, and post below, are you interested at all in the Xbox One S? That does it for me, The Red Dragon. I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.
Are you listening? Damn.